She thought she was chosen to save the kingdom, but the truth was far darker. The wolves didn't come to protect her, they came to awaken what was sealed inside her. And now, as the ground beneath the palace begins to crack open, Elara realizes the prophecy was never about sacrifice, it was about something waiting to be born. The first hell shattered the silence of the frozen night. It echoed across the mountains like a warning sent by the moon itself. Then came another, and another. Four deep, powerful howls rolled through the snow-covered wilderness, causing birds to burst from sleeping trees and hidden animals to retreat into their dens. The border guard standing atop the northern watchtower immediately froze. Every face turned toward the darkness beyond the kingdom's border. One guard tightened his grip on his spear. "Did you hear that?" The older soldier beside him nodded slowly. "I heard it." Fear flickered in his eyes. Because those were not ordinary wolves. Everyone in the kingdom knew those voices. The royal wolves, sacred guardians of the crown. The four beasts had not left the royal capital in years. Yet somehow their howls were now echoing from the frozen borderlands. Something was terribly wrong. Far below the tower, hidden beneath sheets of falling snow, a lone figure crawled through the darkness. Elara could barely feel her hands. The cold had already stolen sensation from her fingers hours ago. Each breath burned inside her chest. Each movement sent pain through her injured leg. Still, she continued forward. One painful step, then another, then a desperate crawl through the snow. Blood stained the white ground behind her. The storm seemed endless. The wind screamed across the mountains, throwing icy needles against her face. Most people would have surrendered long ago. Most people would have accepted death. But Elara had already lost everything. Death no longer frightened her. What frightened her was dying alone before discovering why her life had been destroyed. A sharp gust pushed her sideways. She collapsed into the snow. For a moment she remained there, staring upward. Dark clouds covered the sky. No stars. No moon. Only endless darkness. Tears mixed with melting snow on her cheeks. Memories returned whether she wanted them or not. The faces of her former pack. The people she had trusted. The people she had served for years. The people who had watched silently while she was accused. Traitor. The word still echoed inside her mind. She had heard it 100 times. Perhaps 1,000. No one listened when she denied the accusation. No one cared about the truth. The evidence had been planted. The judgment had already been decided. An Omega was easy to blame. Especially a crippled Omega. Elara closed her eyes. She could still see the Alpha standing before the entire pack. His expression cold. His voice merciless. "You have brought shame upon us." She remembered falling to her knees. Remembered begging them to investigate. Remembered searching the crowd for a single ally. A single friend. A single person willing to defend her. There had been none. Not one. The memory stabbed deeper than the winter cold ever could. A painful laugh escaped her lips. After years of loyalty, they had thrown her away like broken glass. The wind roared again. Elara opened her eyes. Ahead of her stood 2 stone pillars rising from the snow. Ancient border markers. The edge of the kingdom. She had finally reached it. Relief washed over her. Then fear quickly followed. The royal kingdom rarely welcomed strangers. Especially exiles. Especially Omegas. If the border guards found her, they would likely turn her away. And if that happened, she would not survive another night. Her body was already reaching its limits. She forced herself forward. The stone pillars seemed impossibly far away. Her arms trembled. Her vision blurred. The world spun around her. But somehow she kept moving. Snow gathered in her dark hair. Ice formed along the edges of her torn clothing. Minutes passed. Perhaps hours. Time had lost meaning. Eventually she reached the first stone marker. Her shaking hand touched the frozen surface. A small smile appeared. She had done it. Against every expectation. Against every impossible obstacle. She had survived. The victory lasted only a few seconds. A deep growl suddenly emerged from the darkness. Elara froze. Another growl answered from a different direction. Then another. Then another. 4 separate voices. 4 predators. Her heart nearly stopped. Slowly, she lifted her head. Massive shapes appeared between the trees. At first they seemed like moving shadows. Then lightning flashed across the distant clouds. The brief burst of light revealed them. Wolves. Huge wolves. Larger than any she had ever seen. Silver eyes glowed in the darkness. Their powerful bodies moved silently through the snow. Each one looked strong enough to kill a bear. Elara's breath caught. No ordinary wolves could reach such size. She knew exactly what they were. Every child in the continent knew. The royal wolves. Sacred beasts chosen by the crown. Legends made flesh. Her pulse raced. This made no sense. Why would they be here? Why would they approach her? Fear tightened around her chest. She was weak, injured, defenseless. If they attacked, she could not even run. The largest wolf stepped closer. Snow crunched beneath enormous paws. Its silver eyes locked onto hers. For several long seconds, neither moved. The storm howled around them. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then something impossible happened. The giant wolf lowered its head. Elara stared, certain she had imagined it. But then the second wolf bowed. Then the third. Then the fourth. All 4 lowered their heads before her. Respect. Submission. Recognition. She did not understand. A frightened whisper escaped her lips. Why? The wolves offered no answer. Instead, the largest turned toward the kingdom. The others moved around her, forming a protective circle, guarding her, protecting her, as though she were someone important, as though she belonged to them. Shock overwhelmed her. This was impossible. She was nobody, an abandoned Omega, a rejected exile, a broken girl crawling through the snow. Why would the sacred guardians of the kingdom honor someone like her? The wolves began walking. After a few steps, they looked back, waiting, inviting her to follow. Elara hesitated. Every instinct warned her that this could not be real. Perhaps she was dying. Perhaps this was a dream created by a freezing mind. Yet the cold remained painfully real. The wind remained real. The wolves remained real. Gathering her remaining strength, she rose unsteadily to her feet. The largest wolf immediately moved beside her, close enough to catch her if she fell. Tears suddenly filled Elara's eyes. No one had shown her kindness in a very long time. Not since before the accusations. Not since before her life collapsed. The simple gesture nearly broke her heart. Together they crossed the border. Far above, the guards on the watchtower watched in stunned silence. One soldier rubbed his eyes. Another dropped his spear. None could believe what they were seeing. The royal wolves, one whispered. They're escorting her. Nobody answered, because nobody had an explanation. Word spread quickly. From the tower to nearby villages. From villages to merchants. From merchants to travelers. Before dawn, rumors raced across the kingdom. A mysterious woman had arrived. A crippled Omega. And the royal wolves themselves had escorted her through the northern gate. Hours later, hundreds of miles away, the royal capital stood beneath the pale light of morning. Massive walls surrounded the city. Towering banners danced in the winter wind. Inside the palace, nobles moved through grand halls of stone and silver. Everything appeared normal, until a royal messenger burst into the throne room. The young man dropped to one knee. His breathing was uneven from exhaustion. King Kael sat upon the throne. Tall, powerful, silent. The room instantly sensed something unusual. The messenger lowered his head. Your Majesty, there is news from the northern border. Kael's expression remained calm. Speak. The royal wolves have returned. A murmur spread through the hall. Several advisors exchanged confused looks. Kael leaned slightly forward. For the first time, genuine interest appeared in his eyes. Continue. The messenger swallowed. There is a woman with them. Silence fell. A woman, one noble repeated. The messenger nodded. A crippled Omega. Confusion deepened throughout the room. But then the messenger spoke a name. Her name is Elara. Everything changed. Kael froze. The entire throne room noticed it. A flicker of emotion crossed the king's face. Gone so quickly that most people almost missed it. But it had been there.
Shock.
The king slowly rose from his throne. No one spoke. No one moved. Even his closest advisors looked stunned. Because Alpha King Kael was famous for his control. Nothing ever surprised him. Nothing ever shook him. Yet somehow a single name had done exactly that. His voice came out low and urgent. Where is she now? Approaching the capital, Your Majesty. Kael's jaw tightened. The expression in his eyes grew darker, older, almost haunted, as though he had just heard a ghost's name after many years. Then he delivered an order that sent unease through every person in the room. Bring her to me immediately. The command echoed through the throne hall. No one dared question it. Yet as the messenger hurried away, and Kael stared toward the distant northern horizon, a terrifying question settled over the room. How did the king know the name of a crippled Omega who should have been a complete stranger? And why did the sacred royal wolves recognize her before anyone else? Far beyond the palace walls, Elara continued her journey toward the capital, completely unaware that her arrival was about to awaken secrets buried for generations. Secrets powerful enough to shake the kingdom to its very foundations. The journey to the royal capital took 2 days. 2 long days of snow-covered roads, silent forests, and endless whispers. Every village they passed seemed to stop breathing. People abandoned market stalls and stepped out of warm homes just to watch. Children pointed. Merchants stared. Travelers pulled their horses aside. No one paid attention to the exhausted woman walking through the snow. Their eyes remained fixed on the 4 enormous wolves surrounding her. The sacred guardians of the crown moved beside Elara like silent shadows. No chains. No commands. No handlers. They simply stayed near her as though protecting something precious. The sight alone was enough to create hundreds of rumors. Elara heard fragments of them whenever the wind carried nearby voices. Who is she? Is she a lost princess? Maybe she saved the king. The wolves have never done this before. Each theory sounded more unbelievable than the last. If they only knew the truth. She was nobody. At least that was what she had always believed. By the time the capital finally appeared on the horizon, exhaustion had settled deep into her bones. The city rose from the snowy landscape like something from an ancient legend. Massive stone walls stretched across the hills. Silver towers pierced the clouds. Royal banners fluttered from every rooftop. Even from a distance, the kingdom's power was impossible to ignore. Elara slowed her steps. For a moment she simply stared. She had never seen anything so beautiful. Her former pack territory suddenly felt very small compared to this. The largest wolf gently brushed against her side, almost as if encouraging her forward. A faint smile touched her lips. Over the past 2 days, she had begun speaking to them occasionally, not because she expected answers, but because their silent presence somehow made the loneliness easier to bear. "Thank you," she whispered. The wolf looked at her. Its silver eyes remained strangely intelligent, almost human. Then it continued walking. The enormous city gates slowly opened as they approached. Royal guards waited on both sides. Their polished armor reflected the winter sunlight. Most stood perfectly still, but many could not hide their surprise. Elara noticed their expressions immediately. Shock, confusion, disbelief. One guard looked ready to faint. The royal wolves passed through the gates first. Not a single soldier attempted to stop them. Elara followed carefully behind. The moment she entered the capital, a wave of sound crashed over her. Thousands of voices, moving carts, blacksmith hammers, street vendors calling to customers. Life existed everywhere. After years spent inside a small pack settlement, the bustling city felt overwhelming. People filled every street. Many stopped whatever they were doing when they noticed the wolves. Crowds quickly gathered. Curious faces watched from windows and balconies. Some even followed from a distance. Elara lowered her gaze. Attention made her uncomfortable, especially after everything that had happened. The wolves seemed to sense her unease. They immediately moved closer, creating space between her and the growing crowd. The gesture warmed something deep inside her chest. Nobody had protected her before. Not like this. Not ever. The procession eventually reached the royal palace. The structure dominated the city skyline. Its towering walls of silver stone gleamed beneath the pale winter sun. Beautiful gardens surrounded the outer grounds despite the cold season. Fountains stood frozen like crystal sculptures. Everything looked impossibly grand. Elara suddenly became aware of how worn she appeared.
Her clothes were torn.
Her boots barely held together. Her dark hair remained tangled from days spent battling the storm. She felt completely out of place. The palace gates opened. A group of royal servants hurried forward. Several healers accompanied them. One elderly woman stepped ahead of the others. Her kind eyes immediately settled on Elara. "You must be freezing, child." The gentle tone caught Elara off guard. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her that way. The woman offered a warm blanket. "Come with us." Elara hesitated, then glanced at the wolves. To her surprise, the largest wolf lowered its head slightly, as though giving permission. Slowly, she accepted the blanket. Warmth instantly wrapped around her trembling body. The simple comfort nearly brought tears to her eyes. The healers guided her toward the palace. For the first time, the wolves stopped following. They remained outside, watching, waiting. Elara looked back one final time before entering. A strange feeling settled over her, almost like saying goodbye to old friends. Inside, the palace seemed even more magnificent. Tall marble columns stretched toward painted ceilings. Golden chandeliers illuminated endless hallways. Beautiful tapestries covered the walls. Everywhere she looked, elegance surrounded her. Yet despite the luxury, she noticed something else. People were watching. Servants. Nobles.
Guards.
Everyone seemed curious. Whispers followed her through every corridor. The attention made her shoulders tense. The elderly healer noticed immediately. "Ignore them." Elara looked up. The woman smiled gently. "The entire kingdom is talking about you." "Why?" The healer laughed softly. "Because 4 royal wolves escorted you across half the kingdom." When Elara failed to respond, the woman studied her carefully. "You truly do not know why." It was not a question. Elara lowered her eyes.
"No."
The healer's expression became thoughtful. For a brief moment she appeared concerned. Then the feeling disappeared. "Perhaps someone will explain eventually." Eventually. The word lingered in Elara's mind. Hours passed. The healers cleaned her wounds and examined her injured leg. Fresh bandages replaced the old blood-stained ones. Warm food arrived. Soft clothes. A comfortable room larger than any place she had ever slept before. The kindness felt unreal. She kept expecting someone to reveal the trick, to tell her she did not belong here, to throw her back into the snow. But nobody did. As evening approached, she stood near a large window overlooking the palace gardens. Snowflakes drifted gently from the sky. The peaceful sight should have calmed her. Instead, questions filled her thoughts. Why was she here? Why had the wolves found her? Why had the king allowed her into the palace? Nothing made sense. A sudden knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened before she could answer. A young boy stepped inside. Perhaps 10 years old. Dark hair. Bright blue eyes. Royal clothing. He froze when he noticed her. Elara immediately stepped back. The child stared. She stared back. Several awkward seconds passed. Then the boy grinned. "You're real." Elara blinked. "What?" "The wolf lady." "The what?" "The wolf lady." His smile widened. "Everyone keeps talking about you." Despite herself, Elara almost laughed. The child walked closer, without hesitation. Unlike the adults she had met, he showed no fear or suspicion. Only curiosity. "My name is Rowan." Elara instantly recognized the name. The king's nephew. The young prince. She lowered her head respectfully. "Your Highness." Rowan made a face.
"Please don't do that."
Confusion crossed her features. The boy crossed his arms. Everyone bows. Everyone follows rules. Everyone acts strange. His expression softened. "I was hoping you wouldn't." Something about the honesty in his voice touched her heart. Slowly, she smiled. "My name is Elara." "I know. Of course you do." Rowan laughed. The sound filled the room with warmth. For the next hour they talked, mostly about simple things. Snow, animals,
Books.
the palace gardens. For reasons Elara could not explain, conversation came easily. Rowan reminded her of sunlight after a long winter.
Bright.
Gentle, innocent. By the time he finally left, the room felt strangely empty. The smile lingered on her face long afterward. For the first time since her exile, she did not feel completely alone. Several floors above, another conversation unfolded inside a private chamber. King Kael stood beside a large fireplace. Flames danced across the room. Lord Varen sat across from him. The king's most trusted advisor watched him carefully. She is settled in. Kael remained silent. Varen studied him. "You still refuse to explain." Kael's expression hardened. "There is nothing to explain." "That is a lie." The words hung heavily in the room. Most people would never dare speak so directly to the king. But Varen was different. Years of loyalty had earned certain privileges. The wolves recognized her. Varen leaned forward. "You recognized her name." Still Kael said nothing. The silence itself felt suspicious. Varen's eyes narrowed. "Who is she?" For several long moments, only the crackling fire answered. Finally, Kael spoke. "Someone I hoped I would never see again." The answer only deepened the mystery. Before Varen could press further, the king turned away. The discussion was over. Yet the advisor's curiosity had already transformed into something more dangerous. Suspicion. Later that night, long after darkness covered the palace, Varen descended into the ancient archives beneath the castle. Few people visited this place. Dust covered countless shelves. Forgotten records stretched into darkness. Old secrets slept here. The advisor carried a lantern through narrow stone corridors. His instincts told him there was something important about Elara. Something hidden. Something dangerous. Hours passed. He searched through ancient documents, family records, royal histories, bloodline charts. Most revealed nothing. Then he found it. A sealed collection of records buried behind restricted royal decrees. His heartbeat quickened. Carefully, he opened the first document. The pages were centuries old. Many names had faded with time. Yet one symbol immediately caught his attention. A silver crescent surrounded by 4 wolves. The same symbol associated with an extinct royal bloodline. The same symbol mentioned only in legends. Varen continued reading. As the truth slowly unfolded before him, the color drained from his face. "No," he whispered. His hands tightened around the ancient parchment. "This cannot be possible." But the evidence stood directly before him.
Clear.
Undeniable. Terrifying. Far above, Elara slept peacefully for the first time in many months. She did not see the silver light beginning to glow beneath her skin. She did not notice the strange symbols appearing briefly across her hands. She did not hear the distant howl that echoed somewhere beyond the palace walls. And she certainly did not know that deep within the archives, Lord Varen stared at a forgotten royal record identifying the last surviving descendant of a bloodline erased from history. A bloodline with a legitimate claim to the throne itself. At the bottom of the page, written in faded ancient ink, stood a single name. Elara. Lord Varen did not sleep that night. The ancient document remained spread across the wooden table before him as the lantern flame flickered in the darkness of the archive. His eyes traveled across the faded words again and again. Each reading led to the same impossible conclusion. Elara was not an ordinary Omega. She was connected to the lost Silver Dawn bloodline, a family that history claimed had vanished centuries ago. A bloodline so important that kings had built legends around it. The final surviving heir had supposedly died during a massacre long before anyone living was born. Yet the records told a different story. One infant had survived. One child had disappeared. One bloodline had continued in secret. And now that bloodline had returned. Varen slowly closed the document. The silence around him felt heavier than stone. If the information became public, the kingdom would never be the same. Powerful noble houses would panic. Ancient loyalties would awaken. Old rivalries would return. Most dangerous of all, people might begin questioning who truly deserved the throne. The advisor's jaw tightened. This secret could destroy everything. Far above the archive, dawn arrived over the royal capital. Golden sunlight spilled across snow-covered rooftops. The city slowly awakened beneath a pale winter sky. Inside the palace, Elara opened her eyes. For a few moments she simply lay still. The soft mattress beneath her felt unfamiliar. Warm blankets surrounded her. No icy wind touched her skin. No hunger twisted inside her stomach. The reality still felt strange. After so many months of suffering, comfort seemed harder to trust than pain. A gentle knock sounded at her door. Before she could respond, Rowan stepped inside carrying a wooden tray. His bright smile immediately filled the room. "I brought breakfast." Elara sat upright. "You carried all that yourself?" "I wasn't supposed to." His grin widened. "So naturally I did." Despite herself, she laughed. The sound surprised even her. Rowan placed the tray on a nearby table and proudly revealed fresh bread, fruit, and warm tea. "You need to eat. You sound like the healers. They train me well." The boy climbed into a chair across from her. For the next several minutes, they shared breakfast together. Conversation came naturally. Easy. Comfortable. Elara found herself looking forward to Rowan's visits more than she wanted to admit. The young prince possessed a rare gift. He made people forget their pain for a little while. At one point, Rowan glanced toward her injured leg. "Does it still hurt?" The question carried genuine concern. Elara hesitated. "Sometimes." The child looked disappointed. "I wish I could fix it." Something tightened inside her chest. For years, nobody had cared enough to ask. Now a child barely knew her and already wished her suffering away. She reached across the table and gently squeezed his hand. "You already help more than you realize." His smile returned immediately. That simple moment remained with her long after breakfast ended. Later that morning, Elara wandered into the palace gardens. Snow covered the pathways like a blanket of silver silk. Frozen fountains sparkled beneath sunlight. Tall pine trees stood motionless against the winter sky. The beauty of the place almost felt magical. For the first time since arriving, she was completely alone. No curious nobles. No healers. No servants. Only silence. A peaceful silence she desperately needed. She followed a narrow path deeper into the gardens. The cold air filled her lungs. Her thoughts drifted. Toward her former pack. Toward unanswered questions. Toward the mysterious wolves who had changed her fate. Then something unusual happened. A small bird suddenly fell from a nearby tree. Elara immediately rushed forward. The tiny creature landed in the snow. Its wing appeared injured. The bird trembled weakly. Pain flashed across its tiny body. Without thinking, Elara carefully lifted it into her hands. "Oh no!" The bird's frightened eyes stared back at her. For reasons she could not explain, sadness washed through her. The creature looked helpless. Broken. Alone. Far too much like she once had. A strange warmth suddenly spread through her palms. Elara froze. Soft silver light appeared between her fingers. The glow pulsed gently like moonlight reflected across still water. The injured bird became perfectly still. For several seconds the light grew brighter. Then it vanished. The warmth disappeared. Silence returned. Confused, Elara slowly lowered her hands. The bird blinked. Its damaged wing moved. Then moved again. Perfectly. Completely healed. Before she could react, the bird launched into the air and disappeared among the trees. Elara stared after it. Her heart pounded. What was that? The question escaped as a whisper. She looked down at her hands. Nothing remained. No light. No evidence. Yet she knew what she had seen. The bird had been injured. Now it was healthy. A chill traveled through her body. Not from fear. From uncertainty. Hours later, another strange event occurred. A palace servant accidentally cut his hand while preparing decorations for an upcoming gathering. The wound was deep. Blood covered his palm. Several workers rushed to help. Elara happened to be passing nearby. The sight made her instinctively step forward. "Let me see." The servant obeyed. His expression showed embarrassment more than pain. Elara carefully reached for his injured hand. The same warmth returned immediately. Silver light flowed through her fingers. Brighter this time. Stronger. Everyone froze. The servant gasped. The wound closed before their eyes. Skin restored itself completely. Not even a scar remained. Silence swept across the corridor. Several workers looked terrified. Others appeared amazed. Elara quickly stepped back. Her pulse raced. The servant stared at his healed hand. Then at her. "What are you?" The question hung heavily in the air. Elara had no answer. By sunset, stories had already begun spreading throughout the palace. The mysterious Omega could heal injuries. The rumors traveled faster than wildfire. Nothing remained secret for long inside royal walls, especially miracles. Inside his private chamber, King Kael stood near a window overlooking the city. The fading sunlight painted golden reflections across the glass. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." The door opened. Varen stepped inside. The advisor's expression remained unusually serious. Kael noticed immediately. "What happened?" Varen approached slowly. "I found something in the archives." The king's eyes narrowed. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Varen carefully placed the ancient document on a nearby table. Kael recognized it instantly. His expression darkened. "You had no permission to access that."
No.
"I see." The king looked away. Silence settled between them. Finally, Varen broke it. "She's one of them." The words carried enormous weight. Kael closed his eyes. Years of secrets seemed to settle across his shoulders. When he opened them again, there was no denial.
No.
Varen stared. Confusion appeared briefly. Kael turned toward him. "She isn't one of them." The king's voice remained calm.
Steady. Certain.
"She is the last one." The room fell silent. Even Varen looked shaken. The reality sounded far more dangerous than he had expected. The last heir. Kael nodded. Varen struggled to process the revelation. Thousands of questions flooded his mind. Only one escaped his lips. "Does she know?"
No.
"And you intend to tell her?" The king looked toward the darkening horizon. "Eventually, when the time is right." Varen's unease deepened, because time was rapidly running out. Elsewhere in the palace, Elara sat alone beside a fireplace. The flames danced softly before her. Her thoughts remained trapped on the strange healing power. Nothing made sense anymore. The wolves, the king, the silver light, the growing rumors. Every answer seemed to create new questions. A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, Kael entered. The king's presence instantly changed the atmosphere of the room.
Tall.
Controlled. Powerful. Yet, tonight something seemed different. Almost hesitant. Elara quickly stood. "Your Majesty." Kael studied her for a moment, then surprised her. "You don't need to stand every time I enter." Confusion flickered across her face. "I don't." A faint smile touched his lips.
No.
The expression vanished almost immediately. Yet Elara noticed it. For the first time, the king appeared less like a ruler and more like a man carrying a burden. Kael walked toward the fireplace. The flames reflected in his dark eyes. "There are things you deserve to know." Elara's heartbeat quickened. Finally, answers. The king remained silent for several seconds, choosing his words carefully. Then he began. "Long ago, before the current royal family ruled this kingdom, there existed another bloodline." The room seemed to grow quieter. They were blessed by the moon goddess herself. Elara listened without moving. They could heal the sick, restore dying land, bring hope where none remained. A strange feeling stirred inside her. Recognition. As though part of her already knew the story. Kael continued. But they were betrayed. The warmth vanished from his voice. They were hunted.
Slaughtered.
Erased from history. The fire crackled softly. Neither spoke. Finally, Elara asked the question that mattered most. "What does this have to do with me?" The king met her gaze. His eyes carried sadness, regret, and something else she could not name. Everything inside her suddenly tightened. She already knew she would not like the answer. Before Kael could speak, a loud crash echoed somewhere outside. Shouts followed, then screams. Both immediately turned toward the window. A palace guard burst through the door. His face was pale with panic. "Your Majesty." Kael stepped forward. "What happened?" The guard struggled to catch his breath. "The prince." Fear swept through Elara instantly. "Rowan." The guard nodded. "There has been an attack." The world seemed to stop. For a single terrifying second, nobody moved. Then Kael was already heading for the door. Elara followed without hesitation. The palace corridors erupted into chaos around them. Running guards, terrified servants, shouting voices. Something terrible had happened. And deep inside, Elara suddenly knew one thing with absolute certainty. The attack had not been random. Someone had come for Rowan. And before this night ended, the kingdom would discover just how dangerous its hidden enemies truly were. The palace corridors shook with urgency. Boots thundered across polished stone floors. Guards rushed in every direction. Servants pressed themselves against walls, their frightened whispers swallowed by the growing chaos. Elara struggled to keep pace beside King Kael. Fear pounded through her chest. Only one thought existed in her mind. Rowan. The young prince's smiling face flashed before her eyes. His laughter. His kindness. The way he had looked at her without judgment. The possibility of losing him felt unbearable. They turned a corner and emerged into one of the palace's eastern courtyards. The scene waiting there looked like the aftermath of a nightmare. Several guards lay injured on the ground. Broken weapons littered the snow. Blood stained the white earth. Royal soldiers had already formed a perimeter around the area. The moment Kael arrived, every warrior straightened. The king's gaze swept across the courtyard.
Cold.
Focused. Dangerous. What happened? A captain stepped forward. His armor bore fresh scratches from battle. "We were escorting Prince Rowan back to his chambers." The captain pointed toward the courtyard. An assassin appeared from nowhere. Kael's jaw tightened. "Where's Rowan?" The captain hesitated. Relief briefly softened his features. "The prince is alive." Elara released a breath she had not realized she was holding. But the captain was not finished. The assassin escaped. The relief vanished. Kael's eyes darkened. "How?" The captain looked ashamed. "We don't know." A heavy silence followed. An assassin had entered the royal palace, attacked the air, wounded elite guards, and escaped. The implications were terrifying. Kael slowly walked across the courtyard. Snow crunched beneath his boots. His gaze settled on something near a shattered fountain. A black dagger. The weapon appeared ordinary at first glance. Then Elara noticed strange markings carved into the blade. Ancient symbols. Dark symbols. The moment Kael saw them, his expression changed. Recognition. Concern. Perhaps even fear. He immediately ordered the area sealed. No one questioned him. Hours later, Rowan sat safely inside a heavily guarded chamber. The prince appeared unharmed physically. Emotionally was another matter. The attack had shaken him. Elara sat beside him, near the fireplace. The boy stared into the flames. Unusually quiet. The silence worried her. Finally Rowan spoke. "I thought I was going to die." The honesty in his voice hurt more than tears would have. Elara gently squeezed his hand. "You didn't." "I know." His gaze lowered. "But I was scared." The confession seemed difficult for him, like admitting weakness. Elara understood that feeling. Far better than most. There is nothing wrong with being afraid. Rowan looked at her. Even for princes? A sad smile touched her lips. Especially for princes. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Rowan leaned slightly closer. Not quite a hug. Not quite seeking comfort. Something in between. Elara wrapped an arm around his shoulders. The boy relaxed immediately. In that moment something changed inside her. A bond deeper than friendship. A protective instinct she had never experienced before. If anyone threatened Rowan again, they would have to go through her first. Across the palace, Another conversation unfolded behind closed doors. Lord Varen stood inside Kael's private war room. Maps covered the walls. Military reports filled a large table. The king remained standing near a window. His posture was rigid, controlled. Yet Varen had known him long enough to recognize the anger beneath the surface. "This wasn't random," Varen said. Kael nodded.
No.
The assassin knew Rowan's route. Again the king nodded. The conclusion became unavoidable. Someone inside the palace had shared information. Someone trusted. Someone close enough to know royal movements. A traitor. The realization darkened the room. Kael turned toward his advisor. "Double security around Rowan." "It is already done." "Good." Silence followed. Then Varen carefully spoke. "The timing is interesting." Kael narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The attack occurred immediately after rumors about Elara's abilities spread. The king remained expressionless. Varen continued. "The kingdom has ignored old legends for generations." He paused. Now a lost bloodline appears. Neither man spoke for several moments. The possibility lingered between them. The attack might not have been aimed solely at Rowan. It might have been connected to Elara, to her growing importance, to secrets buried deep within history. That possibility worried Kael more than he wished to admit. The following days brought no peace. Investigations expanded throughout the capital. Every servant, every guard, every noble. Nobody escaped scrutiny. Yet no answers emerged. The assassin had vanished completely, as if swallowed by the shadows. Meanwhile, stories about Elara continued spreading. People whispered about the healing incident, about the wolves, about the mysterious Omega living under royal protection. Curiosity slowly transformed into fascination. Not everyone welcomed it. Several influential nobles viewed her growing reputation with suspicion. Others openly disliked her presence. An outsider receiving attention that traditionally belonged to them. The tension became impossible to ignore. Elara felt it everywhere. In cold glances. In hushed conversations. In the silence that followed whenever she entered a room. She tried not to let it affect her.
Most days she succeeded.
Some days she did not. One afternoon she found herself wandering through the palace gardens again. Snow had begun melting beneath the first signs of approaching spring. Small patches of green appeared among the white landscape. Life returning after a long winter. The sight felt strangely symbolic. She stopped beside a frozen pond. The surface reflected pale sunlight. For a moment she simply enjoyed the quiet. Then footsteps approached. She turned. Kael stood nearby. The king wore no crown today. No royal cloak. Only simple dark clothing. Without the symbols of power, he appeared unexpectedly human. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt comfortable, natural. Eventually Kael stepped beside her. "How is Rowan?" The concern in his voice was genuine. Elara noticed. "Better." A faint smile appeared. "He asked 3 guards to teach him sword fighting this morning."
Kael sighed.
"That sounds like Rowan." They shared a brief laugh. The moment felt surprisingly easy. For the first time, Elara understood why people remained loyal to him. Beneath the title and authority existed a man carrying immense responsibility. Someone who genuinely cared. The realization made her nervous. Because lately she had begun noticing things she should not notice. The way his eyes softened around Rowan. The patience hidden beneath his stern exterior. The loneliness he rarely allowed others to see. Dangerous observations. Dangerous feelings. She quickly pushed them aside. Kael seemed unaware of her thoughts. Or perhaps he simply hid his own equally well. His gaze drifted toward the distant mountains. "Do you ever think about leaving?" The question surprised her. Leaving? The kingdom? Elara considered it. Her answer came honestly. "I used to." Kael glanced toward her. What changed? She looked around the gardens, the palace, the city beyond. Most importantly, the people she had come to care about. "Now I have reasons to stay." Something unreadable flickered across the king's face. Before either could say more, a servant appeared. The moment ended. Yet the feeling lingered long afterward. Elsewhere inside the palace, Lord Varen worked tirelessly. At least that was what everyone believed. Few noticed the secret meetings, the hidden messages, the carefully crafted lies. Because Varen had spent years building trust, years becoming indispensable, years ensuring nobody would ever suspect him. And now those years were paying off. Late one evening he met privately with several powerful nobles. The gathering took place inside a secluded estate on the edge of the capital. Away from curious eyes, away from royal oversight, the atmosphere felt tense. One noble leaned forward. Are the rumors true? Varen remained calm. Which rumors? The Omega. His expression darkened slightly. The stories grow more concerning each day. Another noble nodded. People already treat her like some kind of chosen savior. Exactly the reaction Varen had been encouraging.
Slowly, carefully,
without anyone noticing, he allowed concern to spread,
doubt to grow,
fear to flourish. The kingdom must be protected, he said quietly. The words sounded noble, responsible, reasonable. That made them dangerous. The conversation continued deep into the night. By the time it ended, seeds of suspicion had been planted successfully. Seeds that would soon bear fruit. Within weeks, unrest began appearing across parts of the kingdom. Small protests at first, then larger demonstrations. Rumors evolved into accusations. Accusations evolved into outrage. Many people still supported Elara. Others increasingly viewed her as a threat. The divide widened every day. Kael worked constantly to maintain order. Yet the situation seemed to worsen no matter what he did. Someone was manipulating events. Someone wanted chaos. The king could feel it. He simply lacked proof. Then everything changed. One rainy evening, Rowan burst into Elara's sitting room. His face had gone completely pale. The prince looked frightened in a way she had never seen before. Immediately she stood. Rowan. The boy closed the door behind him. His hands trembled. Elara. Fear tightened her chest. What happened? Rowan looked over his shoulder as if expecting someone to follow. Then he reached inside his coat. A folded bundle of papers emerged. Old letters. Official letters. Sealed letters. I found these. Confusion crossed her face. Found what? Rowan swallowed hard. In Lord Varen's office. The name alone made her uneasy. Why were you in his office? The prince hesitated, then answered honestly. I wasn't supposed to be. Even now, despite everything, he remained a child. Curious. Adventurous. Sometimes reckless. Elara carefully accepted the documents. The moment she began reading, her blood ran cold. Military movements. Secret communications. Financial records. Messages exchanged with foreign territories. Messages discussing troop positions. Defensive weaknesses.
Plans.
Betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming. Impossible to dismiss. Impossible to explain away. Lord Varen was working with enemies of the kingdom. The trusted advisor. The king's closest ally. The man everyone respected. A traitor. Shock filled the room. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Rowan whispered the question both feared. What do we do? Elara immediately rose. We take these to Kael. Hope flickered briefly in Rowan's eyes. Then a terrible sound echoed from outside. Footsteps. Many footsteps. Moving quickly. Approaching the room. Both froze. The hallway beyond suddenly fell silent. An unnatural silence. The kind that arrives moments before disaster. A shadow appeared beneath the door. Then another. Then another. Elara's pulse thundered. Someone knew. Someone knew what Rowan had discovered. And whoever stood outside had no intention of letting them reach the king. The silence outside the door lasted only a heartbeat. Then the handle moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Elara's pulse surged. Rowan instinctively stepped closer to her. The bundle of stolen documents remained clutched tightly in her hands. Every instinct screamed that whoever stood beyond that door had not come for a friendly conversation. The handle turned further. A shadow stretched across the floor beneath the crack. Then a voice came from the hallway. Calm. Controlled. Dangerously familiar. Open the door, Your Highness. Rowan's face went pale. Elara immediately recognized the voice. Lord Varen. For a moment neither moved. The advisor spoke again. There is no need for fear. The statement only made the situation more terrifying. Elara quickly looked around the room. One entrance. One balcony, overlooking the inner gardens. 3 floors above the ground. Not an ideal escape route. The door rattled. Varen's patience was fading. Rowan. The prince swallowed hard. He knows. Elara nodded. Yes. Outside, more footsteps arrived. Not guards. Not servants. Too many. Too coordinated. The realization settled like ice in her stomach. Varen was no longer hiding. Whatever happened next would expose everything. A loud impact struck the door. Wood groaned. Rowan flinched. A second impact followed. Stronger. The hinges shook violently. Elara moved toward the balcony. Can you climb? The prince looked horrified. That's your plan? A third impact splintered part of the frame. There was no time for a better plan. Can you? Rowan looked over the balcony edge. His expression answered the question before his words did.
No.
The door cracked. Wood fragments scattered across the floor. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Then something unexpected happened. A deep howl echoed through the palace grounds. The sound froze everyone, including the men outside. A second howl followed. Then a third. Then a fourth. The royal wolves. Alara's heart skipped. The powerful voices rolled through the night like thunder. Outside the room, confusion erupted. Orders were shouted. Footsteps moved away. The pressure on the door vanished instantly. A few seconds later, complete silence returned. Rowan blinked. What just happened? Elara had no answer. But she knew one thing. The wolves had intervened. Again. Moments later the door burst open. Both prepared for the worst. Instead, King Kael entered surrounded by elite guards. His eyes immediately found Rowan. Relief flashed across his face. Then he noticed Elara's expression. And the documents in her hands. Everything changed. The king dismissed everyone except a handful of trusted warriors. The chamber doors closed. The room grew quiet. Elara stepped forward. You need to see these. Kael accepted the papers. The further he read, the darker his expression became. Military routes. Secret communications. Financial transfers. Every page revealed another layer of betrayal. The silence became suffocating. Finally, Kael lowered the documents. His voice came out cold enough to freeze stone. Where did you find them? Rowan straightened. In Lord Varen's office. The king's jaw tightened. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Then Kael looked toward his commander. Seal every gate. The warrior immediately nodded. Yes, your majesty. Find Varen. The commander hesitated. Only briefly. He's gone. A terrible silence followed. Everyone understood what that meant. The traitor had already fled. Far beyond the capital, hidden among dark mountains near the eastern border, Lord Varen stood upon a stone cliff overlooking thousands of campfires. The sight stretched across the valley below. An army. Not a small rebellion. Not a handful of mercenaries. An army large enough to threaten an entire kingdom. Torches flickered beneath the night sky. Warriors sharpened weapons. Massive siege machines waited in silence. Dark banners danced in the wind. Varen's years of preparation had finally reached their conclusion. A figure emerged from the shadows beside him. The warlord known as Darius. A giant of a man with scars crossing his face. His reputation alone terrified entire regions. The kingdom knows? Darius asked. Varen nodded. They know enough. The warlord smiled. Good. His gaze shifted toward the distant west. Toward the kingdom they intended to conquer. Then the war begins. 3 days later, the first border fortress fell. The news struck the capital like lightning. Then a second fortress fell. Then a third. Refugees flooded western roads. Entire villages evacuated overnight. Panic spread faster than enemy forces. Inside the royal war room, maps covered every surface. Generals argued. Messengers arrived constantly. Reports grew worse by the hour. The kingdom stood on the edge of catastrophe. Kael remained calm, at least outwardly, but those closest to him noticed the strain, the sleepless nights, the growing shadows beneath his eyes, the impossible weight resting upon his shoulders. Meanwhile, Elara watched everything unfold with helpless frustration. People suffered. Families fled their homes. Soldiers died defending borders. And despite her abilities, she could not stop any of it. One evening, Rowan found her standing alone in the gardens. The first spring flowers had begun pushing through the soil, tiny signs of hope amid gathering darkness. The prince approached quietly. "You blame yourself." Elara looked at him. "What? You always get this look." She almost smiled. "What look?" "The one where you're carrying the whole world." His answer caught her off guard. For a child, Rowan noticed far more than people realized. She sighed softly. "I wish I could do more." The boy followed her gaze toward the horizon. "So, does Uncle Kael?" Neither spoke for several moments. Then Rowan reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden wolf, one of his favorite carvings. He placed it in her hand. "When I'm scared, I carry this." Elara looked down. The carving was worn smooth from years of use. "My mother gave it to me." The admission carried enormous trust. "I think you need it more right now." Emotion tightened her throat. Sometimes Rowan's kindness felt stronger than magic. She carefully closed her fingers around the small wolf. "Thank you." The prince smiled, then grew serious. "We're going to win." His confidence sounded absolute.
Childlike. Pure.
Elara wished she shared it. The next morning changed everything. A royal scout arrived carrying information recovered from enemy territory. Information hidden within ancient ruins recently occupied by Varen's forces. Most of it concerned military movements. One discovery stood apart from the rest. Ancient records. Records mentioning the Silver Dawn bloodline. Kael immediately summoned Elara. The king led her deep beneath the palace, far below the familiar halls, past sealed doors untouched for centuries. Eventually, they entered a forgotten chamber illuminated by silver crystals embedded within the walls. The air felt different here. Ancient. Sacred. As though history itself lingered within the stone. At the center stood a circular platform covered in symbols. Elara stopped breathing. The markings looked familiar. She had seen them before. In dreams. The realization sent chills through her body. Kael watched her reaction carefully. "You recognize this place?" It wasn't a question. Slowly she nodded. "I've seen it." The king appeared unsurprised. Then the records were correct. He approached the platform. The Silver Dawn bloodline did more than heal. Elara listened silently. They protected something. His voice echoed softly through the chamber. A power capable of balancing life and death. The words settled heavily in the air. She felt drawn toward the platform, toward the symbols, toward something waiting beneath the surface. As her foot touched the ancient stone, silver light erupted across the room. The symbols ignited instantly. Brilliant energy surged through every wall. The entire chamber awakened. Elara gasped. Visions exploded inside her mind. A city consumed by fire. Warriors wearing silver armor. 4 giant wolves standing before a throne. A woman whose face looked astonishingly similar to her own. Then came another image. A battlefield. Thousands dead. Darkness spreading across the land. And standing against that darkness was the same woman. Radiant. Powerful. Sacrificing herself. The vision vanished. Elara staggered backward. Kael caught her before she fell. His hands steadied her. Concern filled his eyes. "What did you see?" She struggled to breathe. "My ancestors." The answer emerged as a whisper. The king remained silent. Slowly Elara looked toward the glowing symbols. Understanding began forming. Terrible understanding. The bloodline had not merely healed people. They had protected the balance between life and death. That responsibility still existed. And now it belonged to her. Another pulse of silver light swept through the chamber. This time words appeared across the ancient stone, written in a language forgotten by most of the world. Yet somehow Elara understood every word. Her heart stopped.
No.
Kael immediately noticed. What is it? She stared at the glowing message. Horror filled her expression, because the ancient prophecy revealed the final truth. The power required to stop the coming darkness could indeed save the kingdom. It could destroy Varen's army. It could restore peace. But there was a cost. A cost her ancestors had paid before. A cost she alone could pay now. Life for life. Soul for soul. Sacrifice. To awaken the full power of the Silver Dawn bloodline, the last heir would have to give up her own life. The light slowly faded. Silence returned. Kael looked from the symbols to Elara. His voice grew tense. What does it say? Tears appeared in her eyes. For the first time since arriving at the kingdom, genuine fear overwhelmed her. Not fear for herself. Fear for Rowan. Fear for Kael. Fear for everyone she loved. When she finally spoke, her voice barely rose above a whisper. The kingdom can be saved. Hope briefly flashed across Kael's face. Then he saw her expression. And hope died instantly. Because he already knew the rest. The kingdom could be saved. But only if Elara was willing to die for it. The silence inside the ancient chamber felt heavier after the prophecy was spoken. Silver light still faintly lingered along the carved symbols, pulsing like a dying heartbeat across the stone floor. Elara stood frozen in place, her breathing uneven, her thoughts scattered between fear and disbelief. Kael remained beside her unmoving, as if even the smallest motion might shatter what little stability remained in the room. The words of the prophecy echoed again and again inside her mind. Life for life. Soul for soul. Sacrifice. It was not a warning. It was a certainty. The chamber began to dim slowly as the ancient magic settled back into sleep. The glowing symbols faded, leaving behind cold stone and unbearable truth. Kael finally broke the silence. We need to leave. His voice was controlled, but there was something strained beneath it. Elara did not respond immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the center of the platform where the vision had struck her. I saw her, she whispered. Kael looked at her carefully. The woman in the vision? Elara nodded slowly. She looked like me. A brief silence followed. Kael's expression tightened. That is not a coincidence. The weight of those words pressed heavily between them. They left the chamber shortly after, ascending the hidden passage back toward the palace. The journey upward felt longer than before, as if the very walls had become heavier with the knowledge they now carried. When they finally reached the upper levels, the palace above them no longer felt like the same place. Everything looked unchanged. Yet nothing felt safe anymore. Guards moved quickly through the corridors. Messengers ran between halls. The distant sound of war preparations echoed through stone walls. The kingdom was no longer at peace. It was preparing to survive. Kael dismissed Elara at the entrance of her chambers, but his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. We will speak again, he said quietly. Elara nodded without speaking. As he turned to leave, she spoke softly. If I refuse it, what happens?
Kael stopped.
He did not turn around immediately. When he finally did, his expression was unreadable. Then the kingdom falls. He left before she could respond. The door closed behind him with a final sound that felt heavier than iron. Elara remained standing in the center of her room long after he was gone. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, filling the silence with weak comfort. She slowly walked toward the window. Outside, the kingdom continued moving as if unaware of the truth that had just been uncovered beneath its surface. But she knew better now. Everything was connected. The wolves, the bloodline, the prophecy, even her survival at the border. None of it had been random. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned quickly. Rowan entered the room, but this time his usual brightness was gone. His face carried tension far too heavy for a child. Behind him stood 2 royal guards. Elara immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? Rowan stepped forward, holding something tightly in his hand. A sealed royal letter. His fingers trembled as he handed it to her. Uncle Kael said to give this to you. Elara accepted it carefully. The seal bore the royal crest. But something about it felt different. Heavier. She broke the seal and unfolded the letter. As she read, her heart tightened. Kael's words were direct. No ceremony, no comfort, only truth. The enemy army had moved faster than expected. Entire western regions were collapsing. The capital would soon be within reach of Varen's forces. The kingdom had days, perhaps less. But the final lines of the letter made her breath stop completely. He had written, "There is no time left for hesitation. The prophecy is not a warning. It is a command." Elara lowered the letter slowly. Rowan watched her face carefully. "What does it say?" She hesitated, then knelt slightly so she was at his level. "Nothing you need to worry about." It was a lie, and they both knew it. That night, sleep did not come. Elara sat alone by the window as storm clouds gathered over the capital once again. The wind outside had changed. It no longer felt like winter. It felt like something approaching, something alive. Her fingers closed around the small wooden wolf Rowan had given her. She held it tightly. For the first time since arriving at the palace, she felt truly trapped. Not by walls, but by destiny. Elsewhere, deep within the war chamber, Kael stood over a massive map of the kingdom. Red markers continued spreading across the western territories. Every movement of Varen's army was precise, strategic, calculated. Too calculated. Kael's generals argued behind him, but he barely listened. His attention remained fixed on one thought. Elara. The prophecy was clear. Too clear. And yet he could not accept it easily. A life given in exchange for survival. A sacrifice no ruler should ever demand. But the kingdom was collapsing, and time was running out. The doors of the war chamber opened suddenly. A scout rushed in, breathless and pale. "Your Majesty." Kael turned immediately. "What is it?" The scout hesitated only once, then spoke. "Varen's army has stopped advancing." Silence filled the room. That made no sense. The enemy had been pushing relentlessly for days. Kael stepped forward. "Explain." The scout swallowed hard. "They have built something." One of the generals frowned. "Built what?" The scout's voice lowered. "A structure. At the center of their camp. Ancient materials. Symbols carved into stone." Kael's expression darkened. He already knew what this meant. Elara's voice echoed in his memory. The symbols beneath the palace. The forgotten chamber. The bloodline's protection. This was not a normal war anymore. It never had been. The scout continued. "And there is more." Kael's eyes sharpened. "Speak." The scout looked down. "They are waiting." "For what?" The answer came quietly. "For her." A heavy silence spread through the war chamber. No one needed to ask who her was. Kael turned away from the table slowly. His thoughts became clearer than ever before. This was no longer about defending the kingdom. It was about Elara. And the enemy already knew it. That same night, Elara found Rowan in the palace corridor. He was standing alone near a window, staring at the darkened sky. When she approached, he did not turn immediately. "I heard the guards talking," he said softly. Elara stayed silent. Rowan finally looked at her. "Are you going to leave?" The question struck deeper than she expected. "No," she answered quickly. But Rowan did not look convinced. Everyone who matters always leaves when things get bad. His words carried pain that no child should carry. Elara knelt beside him. "I am not leaving you." Rowan studied her face carefully. "Promise." She hesitated, just for a moment, then nodded. "I promise." He seemed to relax slightly, but something in his eyes remained unsettled, as if he knew more than he was saying, as if he understood more than he should. Far away, thunder rolled across the sky. Not natural, not distant, closer. The next morning arrived with heavy silence over the kingdom. No birds, no merchants shouting. Even the wind felt restrained. Kael summoned Elara before sunrise. She arrived at the war chamber to find him already waiting. But this time, he was not alone. The royal wolves stood behind him, all four, watching her, waiting. Kael turned slowly. "The enemy is moving." Elara's chest tightened. "So soon?" He nodded. "But that is not the worst part." He stepped closer, his voice lowered. They are not coming to conquer the kingdom. A pause. They are coming for you. The words settled like ice. Elara felt the truth instantly. The prophecy. The structure in the enemy camp. The timing. Everything aligned too perfectly.
Kael continued.
They know what you are. Elara's breath caught. And they believe if they take you alive, he said, they can force the awakening without sacrifice. Silence followed. The wolves behind Kael shifted slightly, as if reacting to something unseen. Elara slowly looked down at her hands. The same hands that had healed. The same hands tied to a deadly prophecy. So, what do we do? She asked quietly. Kael met her gaze directly. His answer came without hesitation. We end this before they reach the capital. A long pause followed. Then he added something softer. And we protect you. The words carried weight. But before Elara could respond, one of the royal wolves suddenly stepped forward. Its silver eyes locked onto her. The air in the chamber shifted instantly. The wolf let out a low, deep growl. Not aggressive. Not warning. Something else. Recognition. Then it bowed.
Slowly. Deeply.
The other three followed immediately. One after another. All four wolves lowered their heads toward her. The same gesture from the border. The same impossible respect. Elara's heart began to race. Kael watched silently, as if he had been expecting this. The lead wolf stepped closer. Its gaze never left her. And then, inside her mind, she felt something. Not words exactly, but meaning.
Clear.
Sharp. Undeniable. The wolves were not protecting her because she was important. They were protecting her because she was theirs. Because the bloodline had not only chosen her. It had awakened something inside her long before she ever knew. Elara stumbled back slightly. What are you showing me? The wolf lifted its head slowly. And in that moment, the symbols beneath the palace chambers began to glow again. Far below them. As if responding. As if awakening for a second time. Kael's expression changed instantly. Because he understood what that meant. The seal was breaking. And whatever had been buried beneath the kingdom for centuries was about to rise. The ground beneath the palace trembled softly. Elara turned toward the floor in shock. The glow beneath the kingdom was spreading.
Fast.
Too fast. And somewhere far beyond the capital, in the enemy camp, Lord Varen stood before the massive ancient structure, watching as it began to respond, smiling for the first time since the war began, because the final phase had already started. And Elara's destiny was no longer a choice. It was being forced open.